Here is the king of the transfer portal, and I'm not talking about Quinn Ewers. Max Olson, the Athletic.com college football national writer, who is all over it when it comes to the transfer portal. Max, thank you for your time. And I want to start, before we get to that, there's so much to get into with that, but the NCAA today, the convention, members adopting that new constitution, it's still going to have to go yet another step, but it's part of a two-step process. Your overall thoughts of, is this about time, and what does it actually, you think, mean in the end?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's time and overdue in terms of actually getting in a room and rethinking what is the actual future of the NCAA need to be, because clearly they are, just as an institution, they are currently losing on a bunch of fronts. And I think it's certainly there's finally Mark Emmert and people around him kind of understood it's time to modernize this. And so certainly, giving more autonomy to divisions. And, I'm interested to see, certainly it sets the stage a little bit for how do things look in the next few years here, the next 5-10 years, in terms of certainly that split between, the haves and have-nots, the Power 5 and the G5, and kind of where are we going in that direction. But, this was overdue, and they can act like it's a historic step, but it's really a first step in sort of a larger overhaul here.
Max, I mean, there's going to be a lot of questions about this. One of my first ones is, so governance, a part of that is being able to govern and make rules that your institutions follow. We've seen that most of them don't really follow them all to the letter. And then when that happens, the NCAA has no teeth to punish that. Now they've changed a lot of the rules to make it where what used to be illegal is now legal if you do it in certain ways. So will they be able to punish wrongdoers, or will there be such thing as wrongdoers in the new NCAA?
No idea. No idea. I mean, I'd be curious to see, certainly, as we've seen with some of the, recent decisions with Baylor and other schools, it is time to rethink, like, what are we actually doing here in terms of infractions and, the actual reach of those things and the teeth. So, yeah, it's one of those many areas where you certainly feel like reform is long overdue, and, hopefully whatever compromises come down the road here, they're actually smart ones.
I saw, Max, where Division II and Division III, in terms of the non-vote or the no votes, what have you, that was mostly comprised of Division II and Division III schools. What do you think the future holds for them, and how much nervousness do you think there is for those levels as far as what today's news means?
Yeah, I think part of it is it's that stress is probably felt, at all of the levels and layers of this of college athletics, where you can go from Power 5 to Group of 5, from FBS to FCS, and then on down. Like, I think is there going to be kind of that that line in the sand here going forward about well we do things our way, and we kind of I know that the leaders at the highest levels of athletics, like the Greg Sinkeys of the world, think it's ridiculous that they get held back by other people that have votes on this stuff, and they want to have the autonomy to do what they want. And so as a conference, and then as among the autonomy five. So I'm sure that stress is felt kind of throughout that food chain of are these things going to are we going to kind of have that those kind of breaks there, I guess, that kind of clarifies that separation. And I guess we'll see, but certainly there's a lot of change that's bound to come here.
All right, so today part of the news is I saw your note, Jarek Bernard-Converse, a 47-game starter, Oklahoma State, Big 12 corner, has entered the portal. He's a grad transfer. That's a big-time talent right there. But also UT flipped the wide receiver. You've been talking about him for quite a bit, from Tennessee to Texas. How much of a big coup is that for UT?
Yeah, that's a big one. Isaiah Nair, the wide receiver from Wyoming, one of the more explosive players in the country this year in terms of a big play threat, and really talented player out of Arlington, Lamar, that ended up in Wyoming. And like a lot of his teammates at Wyoming who've gone into the portal and moved on to Power 5 schools, that guy was one of the most coveted players on the market there. And so, he committed to – this was one of the more unique ones in terms of this portal cycle here where, he verbally committed to Tennessee about 2 weeks ago. And then after he did that, he was convinced to keep taking visits. And so he went and checked out Ole Miss, and then he took a trip, I think yesterday, to Texas, and that sealed the deal there. So maybe that was his dream school all along. I don't know, but that we've seen, I guess, with Dylan Gabriel and with him, we've seen that, it's a commitment, but it doesn't mean as much until they actually get on your campus. So big deal there. And certainly Jarek Bernard-Converse, I'm sure Oklahoma State will try to get him back. And they need to hire their DC. Obviously, we reported that it's looking like Derek Mason's a good candidate for that job, but he'll have other job options. I think if they can get a DC in-house there, that's going to help them in terms of being able to recruit him back. But certainly you saw Tanner McAllister go with Jim Knowles to Ohio State. And Bernard Converse is he's from Louisiana, so I imagine he's going to have some big offers close to home as well.
Max, do you see Jim Harbaugh jumping ship at Michigan after he did what they wanted him to do? I mean, at least got him to where at least the front door of where they wanted him to be.
I would still be surprised if he actually did it. Honestly, I think that would be, really pretty wild if he felt like. I get the thinking. He's got a lot of connections there in terms of the Raiders organization. I believe that, his wife's from Vegas or something like that. They have some ties there. This is kind of one of those jobs that could come along that, would be enticing. And look, if you go look at the resume, certainly he was extremely successful in the NFL, with the 49ers. So I could see him doing it, but it would still shock me. Honestly, it would, because, it seems like they finally kind of got Michigan, right where they need to be, right where they're expected to be. And, can you sustain that next year? It's going to be challenging, but you would think that with all the kind of positive momentum there, that Michigan's suddenly in kind of a great position to recruit better and stay successful.
Max, your thoughts on JT Daniels entering the transfer portal?
Yeah, fascinated to see where he'll end up. It's been, you think about the whole career there, it's been a pretty fascinating one. This is a kid that reclassified to go to school early and then becomes the starting quarterback of USC as a true freshman and starts that whole season. Gets injured in year 2, transfers to Georgia for year 3, doesn't get to start until the last 4 games there, wins all those games, leads into the win over Cincinnati in the New Year's Six Bowl, and you feel like, okay, this guy's got a chance to have a really special year here with what they had. Certainly we saw what they had on defense, and only gets to start 3 games this year, loses the job, gets hurt, loses the job to Stetson Bennett. It's been a really wild run for him, and I still think he's one of the better quarterbacks in this cycle, and if he can go to a good place, I don't know. If you're a guy like him, do you want to go to a Power 5 place where you have to maybe potentially compete for a job, or do you go to Group of 5 where you can just put up huge numbers and be really happy and have a little bit less stress? I'm interested to see what kind of choice he wants to make here at this crossroads.
How many more? Obviously, Caleb Williams is still not yet. Guy who is pretty good, that quarterback.
I think I've heard of him.
Yeah.
I think I've heard of him.
He hasn't popped yet, but I think it's probably – I saw where even Dean Blevins, who's from Oklahoma, I know he mentioned something about USC and LSU, perhaps 1 or 2. But how many more dogs like a Caleb Williams, and I don't know if there's any other one like Caleb Williams, but how many more of your elite top 8 to 10 guys are still open in the portal and still haven't yet made up their mind?
Yeah, it's funny. They, new ones could kind of pop up every day, and certainly – in the last 24 hours here, we had, Jermaine Burton, who is a big-time recruit and the leading receiver among wideouts at Georgia this season. He went in the portal. He instantly becomes a really coveted guy, along with JT Daniels and Bernard Converse. I think the big ones that we're all watching here are certainly Caleb Williams, Jackson Dart, the USC freshman quarterback, and his teammate Michael Trigg, very talented tight end. They've been taking visits together. USC, Ole Miss, I think that seems like that's kind of the battle there. Oklahoma and Ole Miss is kind of the battle there. O'Shawn Mathis from TCU, really talented pass rusher. You guys know from Maynard. I think he's got a big decision to make. I think people expect Texas there, but he's got some time to explore his options too. But yeah, that list of kind of those big time guys, the guys you maybe look at as like high 4-star, 5-star type guys. It's sitting out here as we get going into the spring semester.
Max, your thoughts on Jackson Player from Tulsa making the decision to come back to Waco a couple of days back and play for Dave Aranda, Ron Roberts, and that Baylor defense?
Yeah, fantastic. Love that for Jackson Player and for Baylor. Certainly I don't have to tell you guys his resume, and I know when he was in high school, I'm sure you guys felt like, man, people are missing on this guy just because they think he's a little bit undersized, but such a talented guy, and really had a heck of a career at Tulsa, and cool for a player like that to get to go through a recruiting process and have all of these Power 5 programs in this region all fighting hard over him. I thought that was a really nice pickup for certainly Baylor's in great shape in terms of the interior D line, but to add Jackson Player just makes it even better and more versatile up front.
Yeah, he's a.
We did watch and we went like, where are the offers? Like, well, why is nobody? Yeah, crazy.
Well, in high school, I mean, how tall was he really back in high school?
Whatever, 6 foot, somewhere around there.
Okay, I'm 5'10" and a half, and I say that because it means I'm not 5'10", but I am. I'm 5'10". I think he probably was 5'11", 5'11" and a half. He might have grown maybe
right around there.
Yeah, he's not a whole lot taller than he was in high school. He certainly toned up a little bit, but he was never really that. But Max, the thing that always got me about him was if you look across the way and you've got offensive linemen that are going to Texas and Oklahoma and all these other places that he's playing, and he was wasting them like they weren't even in front of him. I think at that point you got to go, well, if he's beating this guy, he can probably hang.
Absolutely, that's the thing, and I think that I'm not trying to diminish him at all. I think what he's done in the American, he's proven he's an all-conference type of player there, and so I don't see why him being with what he's done so far, I don't see why he can't be a really disruptive player in the Big 12 for Baylor, and I think that as you saw with all the schools that offered and were fighting over him, and I'm sure he puts out a top 5. I'm sure that's just to simplify it because you got way more schools than that, reaching out to you and banging on your door. Cool deal for him, and to get to come home like that. I'm excited to see how that pays off, and certainly as we saw with Akuika, those guys make a huge difference.
Max, I did want to ask you. I saw the other day you got into a conversation or had seen something about people wanting certain parameters around the transfer portal or having concerns, and so you asked the question of like, hey, well, for all those people saying this, like, what is your actual idea or what is your gravest concern? If you were to have a rough estimate of the responses you got, what would you say ultimately was like the pressing concern amongst college football fans that you heard, or what maybe ideas were presented that you thought maybe had a little something to them?
Well, okay, I'll put that to you guys too, because honestly, I think the reason I was tweeting about this was because Paul Feinbaum was sort of posing this question to his audience of what's the bigger problem right now in college football. Is it the college football playoff expansion situation, or is it reform for the transfer portal? And to that, I would just say, like, what do people want? I mean, I think you can kind of come up with some things that would maybe sort of refine the process a little bit. But I think at the end of the day, what upsets people is the number of players that are leaving your program, and there's not really anything you can do to change that. Like you can say, okay, there's windows of time. Like we've already said, okay, you have to leave by this date to use the one-time transfer exception, right? Mm-hmm. You could say, all right, here's the transfer windows where you can only leave, during this stretch of, these months during the year or whatever. You can do that. So I don't think that's really going to dissuade players that want to leave from leaving. I don't think that's going to change the number of players that's going in the portal. Like if you want to talk about the number of scholarship players that are entering the portal, and I think we're over 1,300 now in this cycle since August. In terms of finding solutions for that, I really don't know what's out there. I also don't think you can, try and put caps on how many players that you can really take out of the portal either. I think that we've reached this point because we needed to we needed to take a lot of restrictions away from transfers, and I think that's best for players. But in terms of reform, I mean, what do you guys think? I guess maybe the question is what problem do you see with all this? Because I don't think that this is going away.
Yeah, I don't think it's going away at all. I'd say the only thing as far as the dates and the transfer portal thing, I would just want to avoid Trey Bradford situations. That would be why I would be in favor of dates, so that you don't have a guy who just transferred to you 2 months ago, who's all of a sudden the week before you're kicking off going, all right, never mind, I'm going back to LSU. That's where I think dates would come in handy. But I think you're right. I mean, and to me, to answer your question about what's the most pressing? I think NIL legislation is probably the most pressing thing as far as me as a college football fan. But that again, I don't know how you corral that.
You want more transparency with that, essentially?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. I mean, just because the way they stated it from the beginning, we've already seen that thrown to the wayside. Like we saw that thrown to the wayside 2 months in. So, I mean, a little cleaning up of that.
We're clearly seeing it being used as a recruiting inducement.
Yeah, right. No question.
Certainly there's, and that's true. That's true of high school players, and it's definitely true of players in the portal too. Not at every school. I'm certainly not saying that, but it does seem like with this, covering this cycle for these top guys, that is becoming a factor here. And so, that part in terms of like transparency and oversight with that, I get that as maybe more important for the future here than you can't cap how many players you can lose.
Right.
There's really no limit to that, and so these coaches have to do a better job of how they run their programs and manage stuff.
One of the things that my concern, I'm not using this because of the Wyoming wide receiver. Great talent. Whoever gets him, that's a great coup. But you have a guy committed, and then he makes more visits, and the next thing you know, he changes his mind. That could happen to a high school player, too, who's coming out to sign in either December or February. But with the NIL, man, I'm telling you, how much are you offered? Okay, here's an extra $25,000 or whatever. And that we know that's happening probably across the board. I just don't like the fact that it's become so obvious. And the NCAA is useless to do anything about it. So why not? If you can do it, do it. If it's legal, go ahead. But it wasn't supposed to be that way. And so,
it's funny to think. I mean, we opened this door, I want to say it's July 1, right? And, we didn't even make it a year in terms of just turning into just buying players.
Yep, it is. Hey, Max, thank you, buddy. Appreciate the time. As always, great to have you. Max Olson, national writer for theathletic.com, joins us, Sikkim 365 Radio. We're going to jump into Ole Miss as one of the teams that's